ready.
Okay. Well, good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Thursday, June 23rd, 2022. It is 8:33 a.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. With me in the boardroom, we have Vice Chair Ty Menser, as well as Commissioner Gary Edwards, County Manager Ramiro Chavez, Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, as well as many other guests from Central Services who are joining us today. And we have Financial Services as well as Director of Information Technology, Dennis Osorio, on via Zoom. The topics for today's agenda is Central Services and Informational Technology rates. And am I passing this directly to you, Robin? And would you like to introduce everyone who's here today?
I would invite everyone to introduce themselves this morning. So go ahead, Jenny, you want to start?
Good morning, Jenny Branham, Fiscal Manager for Central Services and the Information Technology Department.
Jenny Silva-Chanowski, Administrative Services Manager.
Sherry Ilg, IT Technical Manager.
Jason Ash, Facilities Manager.
Bruce Robin, Fleet Manager.
And we got Dennis Osorio on the Zoom.
Good morning, Dennis Osorio, IT Director.
Right, and I am going to, I'm going to share my screen. Wow. You'd think I know how to do this after 2 years. And maybe I can even start the slideshow. Yay. So this morning we are here to talk to the board about the rates for the 2023 budget in Central Services and Information Technology. This is a lot like what you heard yesterday from HR, only these are two more areas where the departments provide services to all offices and departments countywide for things that are really shared type of services that everyone needs. So as I said yesterday morning, the work on the rates starts in February, sometimes January. We send out inventories to all offices and departments that we use to calculate a fair and equitable distribution of rates to all funds. And the request to the board today is to approve the rates so we can set them up in the budget system and everyone has them as they develop the budget for the midterm. We are required by the state auditor to update the rates every year. This is part of a biennial process. A midterm adjustment is required, and one of the things we are required to do is adjust internal service rates, and that's why you see these every year regardless of the duration of the budget that you adopt. The county offices and departments need these rates in June so they can build their budgets, and it's particularly important for restricted funds because they need to know how much they're working with. Overall, the impact of the proposed rates is an increase in information technology of 2.74%. And that is above what we had predicted for 2023. And in Central Services, there's a 19.1% increase in the rates. And as we go through, Dennis and I will be explaining what is driving those increases. So there are three different kinds of internal service funds. There's maintenance and operating funds. And those are covering the day-to-day costs of the services that we provide. And an example of that is the operating fund in Central Services where we provide facility services. We're doing it every day, we're changing lights, we're moving stuff, we're repairing HVAC systems. Those kinds of things are day-to-day operating funds. We have reserve funds that are basically savings accounts. And examples of that are the large IT system reserve or the ER&R fund. The reserve funds are where we save up money, so when it's time to replace something like equipment, we have the money available to buy it. We don't have to borrow or go into debt or buy on a loan. And the third type is a risk fund, and you heard about one of those yesterday, a couple of them. Actually, the insurance risk pool is a risk fund, or insurance, they're also called insurance funds, the unemployment insurance fund. So you've got three kinds of internal service funds. And today you're going to mainly hear about the Mno Funds, or Maintenance and Operating Fund, and reserve funds. As I said, central services and information technology provide internal services to other counties and departments. And they include in these departments, building maintenance, utilities, fleet operation, phones, computers, software, all those kinds of things that a business cannot operate without. And we recover the costs into these funds through the rates that you're going to hear about today. We develop our rates based on, actually we follow best practices in how to develop rates. As you've heard from me before, state law requires a fair and equitable distribution of costs to every office and department. It has to be fairly allocated to every fund and every funding source. These types of rates are governed by state laws and federal laws, so we have very specific rules we have to follow. And there is a state law that basically says one fund cannot pay for services provided by another. So when you, this is the thing that says lake management districts is a great example. The only option you have to pay for internal service costs incurred by a lake management district is to cover them with general fund. We can't just not cover their costs and distribute the cost to every other office and department. You can't just leave them out of the equation. There has to be a fair allocation method for everyone we do. And the way you distribute the costs has to have some relationship to the kind of cost it is. So we allocate, for example, the cost of building maintenance based on the square footage an office or department occupies. So you'll hear a little about our allocation methods as we go, but we are required to follow certain rules and guidelines when we allocate costs. And that's true not only of these two departments, but also HR and financial services that you'll hear about tomorrow.
Can we take a question?
Yeah, might as well take questions
Just
while
a quick one on that, because when you brought up the LMD, and so when we decided to use the general fund to pay their rates, I understood you were advocating for that approach as better, but it sounds to me like what you're saying is that was the only approach. Like we couldn't have not charged those internal service rates, which is kind of what the other option that we were considering. And I didn't understand it as impossible or illegal or whatever. I understood it as you thought it was cleaner, better. There was other reasons, but I'm just making sure I understand. Because it sounds like you're saying we couldn't have done it the other way.
You could, you've got two options, right? You can either bill the fund and let the fund pay, or you can pay out of general fund. It is much cleaner to bill the fund, let the fund pay, and then transfer the general fund over, because that way in any audit, we can show that there was a fair and equitable distribution. If we could just say, okay, the share, you can calculate the share of the Lake Management District, $20,000. And you could divert that cost, if you will, to the general fund instead of billing it to the Lake Management District. But then you would have it would be challenging to show how you did a fair and equitable allocation that included those costs.
But is that what the lake management, I know we don't want to get afield, but the lake
Yeah.
management districts were saying, we're
Just
like
don't
the
bill
only
me.
county, well, they were saying we were the only county that includes those, so is that what all the other counties that are not including them somehow are
I've
doing?
not looked at
Are you
the
not
other
sure?
counties,
Okay.
so I can't comment on that.
Okay, well, I know it's a
There's
separate topic.
gotta
so-
be, yeah.
Is there something in there that covers like for the public good or for the users of residents that live here? I mean, especially when they've got a public access, for an example, going back to the lakes issue. So it's for everybody's use. Does that make it more acceptable? I don't know, I mean.
No, it's still a cost of doing business, and you have to allocate appropriately. And if the board wants to address the concept of it's a benefit to the entire county, I would suggest that you're doing that by transferring in the general fund. I've also said that when you start backfilling with general fund, if you will, that you're on a bit of a slippery slope because the lake management districts aren't the only one that don't wanna have to
Yeah,
pay
where
their
would you stop?
interfund costs. I've heard from other funds, internal funds to the county.
As an example, do we have any free electric vehicle plug-ins? I know some jurisdictions have free electric vehicle plug-ins.
Do we
Do
have?
we have any free electric vehicle?
We do not.
Not in the county, but you could choose to do that. And then we'd have to figure out how to pay for that.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean, how would that be not, wait a minute.
Yeah, adjustment. There's a plug that's not managed by Fleet.
And that is where? And who does manage it?
It is located on the point. Oh, that one? Yes. So we had like a vendor?
So somebody could pull up there with their vehicle and plug in
Yes.
for free?
Yes.
So how does that
We
get covered?
basically
I'm
have
just
to.
using that as an example though. How do we justify from a position of, free to some, no gifting of public funds? And somebody's paying for that electricity, I guess. I guess it's the
It has a
county.
government purpose. If it can be connected to a government purpose.
What would be the government purpose?
Climate, addressing climate change.
Well, clean water, we could say, for the lakes, it's clean, it's clean water.
The government has water quality programs. So we're kind of getting off track and.
I know,
and,
but gifting of public funds is what I hear all the time. And we can do it for some, but not for others or whatever. So it's gonna be a question that'll come up, I suppose.
Okay,
Okay,
Yep.
good enough.
great. All right, so what you'll hear more about today is how we develop the rates and how they're allocated to the offices and departments. One of the things that we do not have in this slide deck, I'm just gonna preface, are that HR did a beautiful job of, was including the financial plans. They're not in the slides, but we do have them should you want to look at our funds and get into the details. So as we go, you can decide if you'd like to see those. All right. So we're going to start with central services. Administrative and operation fund in central services. Excuse me, these are things that pay for building maintenance, custodial services, utilities, and then we cover the cost of the leases. Water. We also do record retention, so we provide all of the record services, and you have a leased facility in the Montman area that is just a huge storage space. This fund covers the mailroom, and we pay for the postage, the general postage for the all of the county offices and department, and then we provide countywide services. The amounts of money that you see on this page, we had adopted a total budget in 2023 in the original budget of 8.3 million. The new rates are now 11.3 million. It's a 35, almost 36% increase in these rates. And you see below what's driving that increase. There's an increase in the cost for the record center. Postage has gone up.
So those are the amounts, it's gone up on each one of those?
Those are the increases, yep.
So do we know what, as you go forward, can you
What's
say
driving
what it is? So records is going up 80,000. What was it and what is it? What's proposed, I mean, the total amount?
Do we have the totals for each of these categories? Instead of just the delta?
I don't.
We can get that for you.
I mean, I just think on a
The-
briefing, it'd be
the
nice
thing-
for us to have
There are
some
four
understanding.
things that are driving the changes here. The big change that you see are in utilities and leases.
In utilities,
Utilities and leases. The new lease at Chandler Court, is added this year. The new lease at the atrium is added in. And the utility costs are going up, for electric, mainly water, those types of utilities. Those are the big drivers. These other increases, are, yes.
I thought the lease with the atrium was covered through COVID funds. Couldn't the maintenance of that be covered through COVID?
The atrium is
Not
not,
the Chandler.
Chandler Court
Yes,
is
sorry.
being built to the ARPA. Yes, we are paying that with ARPA. But it flows through the central services rates. All of our leases go through central services and then get billed out. So ultimately, it's paid from ARPA. And the lease for the atrium will be paid approximately 60% general fund and 40% to other funds, maybe a little higher in general fund. And you've already seen that I factored that into the forecast for the general fund, but the costs flow through central services.
Oh,
All of
okay.
our lease costs.
Maybe a follow-up on that, because
Montman,
when we pay it looks to me like, so the lease dollar amount went up by 2,280,000,
that's correct.
okay? And a big piece of that is the atrium, but some of it is the Chandler Court over here. But this is adjusting the rates up for all, isn't it? I mean, doesn't that adjust how we're paying for everything? So are you saying that the sheriff's office or the prosecutor or something over here, they're not getting an increase?
That's for those leases, that is absolutely correct.
They're not gonna have an increase.
That's right, because they won't be moving into these buildings. The
So all the
you
increases.
run the lease, so here's where allocation comes in. You're seeing the rates in the internal service fund. What you don't see on this slide is who's paying into the fund. What you're seeing is the expenses that get paid out of the fund. We then turn and bill the offices and departments that have a dog in the fight, if you will, almost. So for these leases, the new leases, they're going to get billed to only those occupants of the buildings where the new lease is going. Chandler Court, we're going to direct bill to ARPA. So it'll be paid, we'll pay the lease the way we normally do, and then Jenny will send a bill to Diana Aarons, who will transfer ARPA money into this fund. So the
courts won't
ultimate
be
payment is
affected.
ARPA. That's right, the
But-
courts won't
But
get
it has to flow through this,
That's because,
Centralized.
yes, it's centralized process.
What about the power bill and the water bill and such that are going up? How, they're gonna have some increases because of the cost of doing business, aren't
Because
they?
we're in new buildings, yep,
Well, no, just the old, even the
Oh,
old buildings.
yeah. So those are allocated based on square footage.
Is the utilities increase right
Yep,
here?
the utilities increase. We've got more buildings, we've got more, in the mailroom, we've got more buildings, so there's gonna be more, incurrence of cost. Postage, the price of stamps
I'd
has
sure
gone
like
up,
to see the dollar amounts, the real dollar amounts that
the
are,
total amounts.
you know,
At the
coming
fund.
from. I'd like to see what it is before and what it is, okay, we're gonna add this.
So I gave you that number at the total, and here's the delta, but we can get you the information that breaks it down.
But my concern, I don't know, maybe, I guess this has to depend on whether or not my seatmates are interested in that number as well, but I wanna know what it is today and the proposed rate is going to be X.
So what
I
it
mean,
is,
not only what we're bumping it up, but what it is today, we're bumping it up and it's proposed to be this. I just think it helps us see the overall budget.
so right
And that doesn't
here,
have to be done today.
right here at the top,
It's the baseline.
what it is today, 8.3 million,
Yeah,
and what it's going to be is 11.3 million.
yeah, and I wanna see where that all,
Increase of $3 million.
I mean, where it
And
fits.
this is the
35%
breakdown.
is a lot.
That's why we provided the breakdown of the 3 million.
So are you looking for instance, on records, what is the baseline on records out of the 8.3 million?
Well, I just think you're trying to inform us.
Right.
So whether it's records, mailroom, leases, utilities, it doesn't matter what it is. I kind of like to have an understanding of where our dollars are going. And if we're paying for utilities, we're gonna pay 244,000 more. I just wanna know, are we at 2 million in utilities? And now we're gonna be 2,244,000 as we move forward. I'd like to know that.
He's looking at the breakdown of the $8.3 million.
Yeah, it is,
Yeah.
but I mean,
I can get that for you.
it gives us a better sense of what's going on. If we're gonna be the ones that say, okay, yeah, we agree, raise it 35%. Maybe we wouldn't say that if we knew the whole thing. I mean, I scrutinize things pretty closely,
I agree. That's why we showed you what's going up.
but 35% increase is a big deal. That's way more than inflation and everything else. I mean,
Yeah.
gas has doubled in price, fuel.
And
you know.
here's why it's going up more than inflation. We've added 2 leased buildings, so there's a huge increase in the cost of leases. We've purchased 2 new buildings, or not new, but new for us. We purchased the Mottman Complex and we purchased Building 7, the Western Builders Association building. So that drives up our cost in countywide services, in custodial, and in the record center. We're storing more records and processing more records than ever before. But the big driver is the cost of the leases and the new buildings. Those are the things that are increasing, that's pushing this up. That's not tied to inflation. If we took those things out, what would the increase be?
4.5,
4.5%, less than inflation.
if we took out the two big leases.
Yeah, just taking out the leases.
Hey, Robin, maybe a good conversation with the board will be how the internal services rates are allocated to the different offices and departments, mainly the general fund. And by allocating, even with those increases, we're not asking the offices and departments to take money away from their current budgets, because most likely those are covered by the general fund
Right.
increases. So I think it's a good conversation to have on this, because it's not like, for instance, the 5% increase on a general fund funded office. The general fund covers that as a baseline.
We add that
We add it
amount,
to
we
the
adjust
baseline.
the amount that each office and
Right.
department has to
So
pay.
for instance, if the budget of an office is 5 million, we're not asking to take away from the 5 million baseline to cover the increases.
Does that go into the maintenance level
Right.
budget,
Yes.
base
So,
budget that we
because
start
the
with
board
to
makes
cover
the-
those
makes the
increases?
decisions, and when Robin walks you through the financial plan of the general fund, included those increases. So when that distribution, the Robin is stated to offices and departments, they're just distributed with additional increases. But the general fund backs that into. So in a way, all the offices and departments will see an increase on their budget, baseline budget, to cover that. So we never ask any office and department to cover the additional
They're gonna
increases.
see a increase of, say, 5%
Yeah.
or something.
And that's what it
Depending on the
is. So,
one,
and that is.
Yeah.
So some are gonna see a very modest increase, kind of that matches,
right,
and some are gonna see a crazy increase. And that has to do with decisions that we made,
right.
whether that's a
I would
Bachman
also say
decision.
that everything here are decisions that the board has already made. You've already approved the lease for Chandler Court. You've already approved a lease for the atrium. We have to add these costs because we're paying them and we need to start to recover them. Or this fund will go
Just wanna
broke.
make sure that we're not asking office and departments to foot the bill in a way.
Right,
So
no, the
that's
board
when the
will
middle-
adjust the budget for
Which is
every office
adjusted
and
internal
department.
rates.
So we just, I mean, just to restate that, but it's like the sheriff's office sees 6%, but they're gonna get 6% more funding in there as we build the
Based
On
on-
That's
the
right.
internal
budget.
rates, absolutely.
That's right.
So it's really just about, it's almost like a, I don't know, it feels to me like it's like a bank, it's like an internal little bank sort of.
Is
It is kind of.
And
Is the mechanical aspects
So they
of
make
it-
their auto
is the
payments to all
mechanical
these
aspects,
different things.
As Robin
Yeah.
stated, this flows through facilities, for instance, the leases. And the board has already made, I think you have a pretty good understanding, for instance, where the money's gonna come from for the lease, for the atrium. Plug it in here and that is distributed to the offices. But that's already backing into those decisions that the general fund to those offices who are gonna be occupied at the
Does
atrium.
that come back to the whole REIT thing? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
No.
Where the funding comes from for?
No,
the atrium.
because this is, so two parts of the atrium. There's the upfront tenant improvements that we're paying out of REIT, and then there's gonna be the ongoing monthly lease payment, the monthly pay my rent.
Which comes out of,
And that comes
60-40
out
out
of
of-
this fund that is then allocated to all of the tenants.
and that's like 60-40 out of general
It's
fund
pretty,
versus.
it's
Yeah,
probably a little higher in general fund because the majority of the tenants are general fund tenants. So the people that'll get a bill, if you will, for the atrium are the auditor, the treasurer, the assessor, our office. Yep,
See that? Yeah.
yep. Public
Environmental-
Works has a small
Environmental health
piece,
has a
environmental
piece.
health.
But they're from their own funds, so public works
Yep,
will
from,
not use
and they'll
general
pay
fund.
from their funds and it's all, and the reason that you do it this way there are two reasons. One is there's an efficiency from centralizing services. You get a efficiency of cost. If you didn't centralize it in this way, every office and department would have to have their own team of people to do all of these things, and the cost would be extremely higher just in personnel costs, not to mention that you lose the buying power of a centralized organization. The other reason you do it this way is to be able to allocate out in a manner that you can show the auditors is fair and equitable. So there's a reason to centralize and that we run everything through in this manner. But it is a little like a bank account. Someone's got to pay in, and that fund pays out. So this is the biggest increase in the whole package, is this one right here. And it's mainly driven by the fact that we have more buildings. Yeah, more space. Building reserve is actually going down a little bit. Jason and his team have done a good review of the needs of these buildings, and we don't need to collect quite as much as we thought we did to cover the ongoing costs. The big change though is with the whole people are moving, and I talked a little bit about how you allocate these types of costs on square footage. We anticipate that in 2023, there are not going to be any tenants in buildings 1 and 4. So there's no one to charge for these buildings. Instead, we're going to be paying to renovate them. So the price goes down, and then there's going to be a kind of a domino effect as we work through the construction. We couldn't find another fair way to do this other than just suspending contributions to building reserve during the construction period.
On this, it says adopted 2023 rate, 8 million, and proposed 2023 rate, 11 million. Is that adopted? Is that the 2022 rate?
No, because you adopted a biennial budget. We had to make some assumptions about what
So we're just
23
gonna
would
be
be, so
adjusting
this is
that.
the change.
Yeah, it's the midterm adjustment and it's the first year of the biennial.
Okay.
Yep, I need to turn the sound off on my phone. All right, so building reserves going down a bit, mainly because we're suspending collections for 2 buildings. Then you have ER&R. You see a 13.8% increase in the Mno Fund, and that is to cover costs of doing business, including staff costs increase, the price of parts, and we are proposing an increase to our rates, as you see at the bottom of this page. Bruce, remind me when the last time we increased these rates was?
2012.
2012. So it's been 10 years since the rates were increased, and we need to increase them to cover the cost of doing business in ER&R.
And this, like this 13% has to do with vehicles cost, I don't know, 20% more or
Mainly the price of
something.
gas.
Fuel.
Yep, fuel
Is
is the big driver in ER&R M&O. But just about the entire increase is fuel.
So what is our fuel budget for a year normally? What was it 2 years ago?
I think 2 years
Last
ago,
year.
we had extremely low fuel prices and we had extremely low fuel consumption. So if I recall right, we were under $700,000.
That had to do with COVID and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Prices.
2020.
But in a more typical year,
But in a more typical year, we're looking more at the $1 million range.
And this year, how much do we expect fuel to cost?
This year, looking more at 1.3 million.
1.3 million, so it's a pretty significant chunk. And it's mainly, the two big users of fuel are Public Works and the Sheriff's Office. No surprises there. And Bruce and his team are working on ways that we can advise all of the offices and departments ways to save fuel. For example, they have a way to tell us how much our vehicles are sitting idling. And we can get that report out to any office and department that would like to know.
But also, I think there is looking into the future to electrify the fleet. And that is an initiative we'll be looking into the future. Because there is an opportunity, not necessarily as a reaction of the high fuel costs, but I believe as a matter of policy into the future, there's some vehicles that can be electrified. And that should be part of the long-term strategy anyways.
Do we have any electric vehicles now?
We do.
And Bruce, those things have a lot less in the line of maintenance and stuff like brakes and oil changes and that kind of stuff, don't they?
They do. Yes, there's reduced PM costs.
Does it balance out?
At current fuel prices, it pays back. But
So we make money on the electric ones right now at the rate for electricity? And we don't not make money,
But yeah, total cost of ownership is very competitive right now, depending on the particular vehicle and its application.
I think there's an opportunity into the future, heavy duty trucks are coming electrical. Just for the F-150s without sacrificing power, for instance, they're gonna come with full electric. And Public Works, for instance, they use the heavy duty trucks, there may be an opportunity to, shift into the future into a more of electric type of fleet. And that is something that we need to work and start looking into developing a plan.
Have you got comparisons on those type of examples, whether it be a pickup truck or a police car, for an example? I mean, I think the performance on those electric cars is exceptional.
So,
You don't have to replace brakes because every time you brake, it charges the battery, or when you let off something. I don't know all that stuff, but do you have comparisons where if you compared a Tesla, I don't know anything about price, but I mean, electric vehicle like a Tesla, even all-wheel drive things.
So this year, what we did is so first of all, there's half-ton range trucks, or half-ton size trucks that are now available through electric. And we did a total cost of ownership analysis and determined that 2 vehicles would be suitable to be replaced with electric trucks this year. So we had placed those orders.
Do they ever consider the difference between carbon-based fuel, for an example, and battery-based operation? But then what it costs to make the batteries versus what it costs to drill the oil? I mean, is there any benefit analysis there that, yeah, it's a good deal, but we're using slave labor and stuff we can't get to make batteries over in China or something?
So the calculation that was done did not include any kind of a social cost of carbon type calculation. It was strictly dollars and cents,
Okay.
gas versus electric, and it came out to be.
Purely investment is return to the investment,
Yes.
without getting into the
Yeah, that might be
the chain.
I'd be kind of interested in, because I've heard that electric vehicle maintenance is less.
Go ahead.
I understand that's a complicated analysis, so I'm not being critical when I say this, but I think our climate emergency declaration committed us to factoring in social cost of carbon when we make these kind of decisions. So I do think going forward, we're gonna have to think about that in some way. I know you can go down the rabbit hole of how detailed and what to include, but at some level, we need to factor that into what we're trying to accomplish by, total cost of ownership, because ultimately we're county government and we're gonna be paying these other costs in various ways.
Yeah, and that would be probably a great project for a new program manager, be coming out. Seriously, it's looking holistically as to
Do
what.
we have one of those? Do
What,
we have one of those?
where,
I felt like I voted to create one.
it's coming up.
You did.
It's out, I believe it's out on the streets right now. We're
Right, but
recruiting.
perhaps before someone else does the work, we'd like to look at the plan, because Bruce has been working on a plan moving toward
I'm not saying
electrifying
it's
the,
taking over, but I think it's more about providing resources to
right.
the county to
Right.
bring those policies to the surface.
And to, you know, in the interest of time, I could offer a work session, a future work session on what the fleet plan is, where you can learn more, because that is definitely something that we've been working on.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so cost of fuel is driving the M&O costs up in ER&R. And the ER&R reserve is also increasing. Bruce every year sits down with every office and department and looks at what their needs are as far as vehicles and large equipment, and assesses each piece of equipment and each vehicle on an individual basis. When did we plan on renewing that or replacing it? What is the current cost projection? And can we drive it a little longer? Does it have less mileage? They look at every single thing and review that with the customer to come up with the replacement plan. But it is going up a little, mainly because the price. And are we replacing more vehicles?
No,
Mainly the price.
This is actually, if you look at where the increase is, it's in the general fund, and that's due to the addition of the cameras. to
Oh, the cameras,
cameras
thank you
with,
for reminding me of that.
Replacement.
Yes, the board approved adding cameras and many other pieces of equipment for the sheriff to the ER&R fund. So that is driving the increase in the cost.
Which is a good strategy,
It's a very good strategy.
because when it's time to replace those, the board's not gonna be facing that big investment because we already have savings in the fund.
So in total, the services is going up by 19.1%. Again, the big drivers are the increase in space in both purchased and leased buildings, and the price of fuel is the other really big driver. And this shows you total impact to the general fund is just under 1.6 million, and then restricted funds 2.1 million in total increase. Now I'm gonna turn it over to Dennis to talk about IT.
Good morning. Dennis Osorio, IT Director. So we have three main
Dennis, we
funds.
can't hear you.
Hello?
Oh, now we
Can you hear
can.
Oh, you can hear me? I had unmuted actually before. I probably started talking too fast. Can you hear me? Everyone's good?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. Dennis Osorio, IT Director. We'll be covering our three main funds, and one is a maintenance fund, and then the other two are reserve funds. So starting off with 5250, you can see we have a 1.5% or 1.57% increase. And that's really broken down. This is our maintenance and operations fund. That's broken down into three specific areas. You can look at IT, and that is actually overall going down 5.3%. And when you look at that, we have a rebate of around $715,000. And this is as we build our rates for a fully staffed department. And just like with everyone in the county, we have not been fully staffed. So once although we collect that money, we rebate it back if we're not fully staffed, because we rebate it back the same allocation method that we collected it, because we don't want to keep any of those funds. And then look at some of the things that were actually increased. Our Microsoft licensing increased around 80,000. And then we also got a new project manager position, which we absorbed this year, which we put into the rates that we will be using across the county going forward. Then going down to our next area, that's geodata. There's an increase of,
Sorry.
hold on. No, sorry. No, that's fine. It's a 23.4% increase. I know that sounds big, but it's a fairly small amount. And a big driver of that is same thing. We had a new employee, embedded public works employee that we got approved this year that was absorbed, that we'll be putting into the rates going forward. So you see a surcharge there, and that's essentially an under collection. We did not collect enough for that program area. So half of that is that new employee, and the other half of that is just a significant amount of users now using GIS software that we're actually having to collect for. And then our last one in this area is Telecom. Same thing, you see a surcharge of around 129,000. The big driver of this is phone use. Mostly new staff a lot of them are getting cell phones as well as desk phones that we're having to, bill for going forward. Any questions on this fund?
Okay, no questions.
Okay. And then here's our two reserve funds. The 5260, you can see there is a 25% increase. And the driver here is all of the new endpoints. So when I say endpoints, as you know, when we went through COVID, many people got their desktops replaced with laptops. We had not updated the collection of these life cycle for these machines. So we needed to update that. So as people's laptops get outdated in 5 years, we have the funds there to replace them correctly. And then we have a small indirect cost that increased as well. And then our final reserve fund is our large system replacement reserve. This is just a small, I think it was actually under 1% increase, and that's just indirect cost. We did not adjust any additional collection rate on any of the application replacement going forward for this year. Any questions on either one of these funds?
No? Okay, no questions.
All right, so then if you look at the aggregate, we're looking at a 2.74% increase overall across all three funds. The allocation breakdown is roughly 58% general fund, 41% non-general fund, and then 1% non-county agencies. And I will say the team in front of you is really critical in creating this. It takes a lot of work. This was our first year actually doing it without Brian Ferris, who retired last year, and this team really stepped up and we were able to not miss a beat, have a seamless transition of developing all these rates. And this goes, I think, between both central services and IT. So very much appreciative of the team in front of you.
Yes. The county manager was clapping for those on Zoom. Okay, commissioners, questions, comments?
Cost of doing business is going up.
Yeah, cost of doing business.
So, Commissioners, with your concurrence, then I would like to see thumbs up and additional permission granted.
That doesn't mean we have to like it, though, does it?
That's true, you
And
don't have to
we'll-
like it.
We'll bring that information to you requested.
I just think it's nice to know. I mean, it isn't mandatory that I don't think we're gonna make any big changes, but we get asked about
So
something.
we can start building those rates on the individual budgets, so office and department can start building their own.
So 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. We are adjourned. 9:20, good job.
So,